Hi everybody. Today we are starting a new unit. This is Unit 2 of our textbook. Basically understanding how to, let me adjust this a second, how to kind of plan for your career. So the first unit was all about, discovering yourself, kind of determining what your strengths are, your values, the things that you're interested in. Now we're talking about how to actually plan for your future career. So it's going to go into academic planning and things like that. Okay. So today we're talking about how to understand why and how to make decisions and solve problems. Okay. So you may have made decisions that you may have made at some point in this school year. You've probably already made quite a few decisions, right? For instance, if you are watching this from home, maybe you made the decision that you are going to be a remote student this year, or who knows, maybe your parents made that decision for you. Okay, so either you've made a decision remote or in-person learning this year. Maybe you've made a decision about what electives to take, right? You elected to take my class, right? My class is an elective, it's not required, it's your choice to take this class. You didn't, however, choose to take your math class or your science class or whatever, right? You've also made a decision on if you want to join an athletic team or not. Maybe you decided to join the football team, or maybe you're on the basketball team. Those are decisions that you have made. You make decisions every day about what you should wear to school, okay, or what you should wear at home. You also make a decision about how hard you are going to work today, right? So there's decisions that you make every single day, which could have a big or a small impact on your day. Now, there's also going to be quite a few decisions that you are going to make within the next 5 to 10 years of your life. I would probably say you have some bigger decisions in the next 5 or 10 years than you'll probably have to make in a long time. Like, these are some of the biggest decisions that you'll have to make in your entire life, because the decisions that you make in the next 5 to 10 years are going to affect you for the rest of your life. Okay, so some of these decisions that you're going to need to make in the near future: what classes are you going to take in high school? That's a decision that you're going to have to make. You're going to also have to make a decision about what clubs, athletics, and activities you're going to participate in. You're going to need to decide, and this is a big one: are you going to go to college, or are you going to get started with your career right after high school? Which one are you going to do? There's kind of two main paths. Okay, if you're going to go to college, which one? What are you going to study in college? That's a major decision. What are you going to study in college, right? Because really that path leads you down a certain path in your life, right? So also, are you going to begin working instead of going to college? Maybe you decide that instead of going to college, maybe you just decide to get started on your career right away, and that's totally a viable option. But that's a big decision that you have to make. Also, do you want to get married? Maybe you want to start a family. Do you want to have kids? These are all major decisions that are going to impact your life, that you're probably going to be making in the next 5 to 10 years. And really, that's not that far off. You might think it sounds like it's a ways away, but it's really not that far off. So basically, I want to kind of go through a decision-making process. There's kind of 6 steps that the book lays out as a decision-making process. The first thing is to identify the decision that has to be made. Okay? Identify the decision that has to be made. So maybe you are making a decision on, okay, I need to make a decision on something simple like, where am I going to eat? Okay? Where am I going to eat? So then step 2 is to consider all possible options. Well, maybe you want to go out to eat in Napanee. Okay, what are all the different options to eat in Napanee? It could be, McDonald's, Burger King, fast food, basically. You go to a sit-down place like the Mexican restaurant in Napanee. There's Roof 152, I think it's called, right? There's a whole bunch of sit-down places you could go to. Maybe you even get takeout. Maybe you get some pizza to take out. Okay, these are all your different possible options. Number 3 is to identify the consequences of each option. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit of smack on the McDonald's right now. If you go to McDonald's and you want to go through the drive-through, or maybe even eat in, maybe the service isn't going to be as good as if you were to go to somewhere else. Okay, the McDonald's in Napanee is kind of notorious for having pretty bad service. So maybe you instead want to go somewhere with good service. Maybe you want to go to a sit-down restaurant with good service. Okay. However, understanding that, maybe you have to wait a little bit longer for your food if you go to a sit-down restaurant. So basically step 3 is kind of weighing the pros and cons of each of your options. Step 4 then is select the best option available. Okay, so pick the best one that you think, after weighing all your pros and cons, choose the best decision that you think you can make. And then step 5 is make and implement a plan of action. So basically you've made your decision. This is where you want to go to eat. What steps do you have to do in order to make that decision happen? I mean, so deciding on a place to eat isn't necessarily the most complicated decision that you're going to have to make. Whereas if you're deciding on a career, there's a lot more more decisions and a lot more thought that has to go into this process. So like making and implement a plan of action on becoming a doctor is going to be a lot more detailed and a lot more involved than making a plan of action to go to McDonald's for dinner, right? So step 5 is make and implement a plan of action to make your decision happen. And then step 6 is to evaluate the decision process and outcome. So once you've made your decision, you've actually carried it out, you go in and evaluate it then. Was it the right decision? Are you happy with your decision? What could you have done better in the next time? That kind of thing. So I'm going to go through an example. An example of a major decision is deciding on a college. Let's use this decision-making process to kind of evaluate our options for deciding on a college. So the first one, identify the decision that has to be made. You're trying to decide on a college, okay, to go to. Let's say you're a senior in high school. You're trying to decide, or a junior even, junior or senior in high school, you're trying to decide where you're going to go to college. Step 2 then is to consider all possible options. Maybe you're deciding between, let's say you've got 3 main colleges that you're looking at. Okay, you're thinking about Bethel College, you're thinking about, let's say, Purdue University, and then you're thinking about UCLA as well, which is in California, okay? Because you know that all 3 of those have pretty good business schools, and you want to get into business, okay? You want to be a manager in the business world somewhere, okay? Step 3 then is to identify the consequences of each option. So you're kind of weighing the pros and cons here. So let's look at Bethel. Bethel, the pros, it's nice and close. Maybe you really value like going to a private Christian college, and that's something that's important to you. That's another pro. Maybe you really value a small school where you're going to get a lot more attention. Maybe your class sizes are going to be a lot smaller because it's a small school, so you're going to get a lot more attention from the professors. Okay, so that's another pro. Okay. However, the cons, since it's a private school, it's going to be a lot more expensive than a public school, so you're going to pay a lot more. Okay, and then also depending on how far away you want, how close or how far away you want to be from home, that could also be a pro or a con, depending on, I mean, it's the closest of all 3 of them. Okay, now let's talk about Purdue. Purdue has a great business school. Another pro for it is it's much more affordable than Bethel because it's a public school. It's a public state school, so it's much more affordable. One of the bad parts, though, is that since it's so big, your class sizes are also going to be pretty big. I went to Purdue, and some of my classes were over 250 people in them. Okay, so there's no way for the professor to get to know me unless I make it a point to introduce myself and spend time in his office hours, things like that. Okay. Another con is that it's farther away from home, right? You can't just come home on a whim, and I mean, technically you can. It's only 2 hours away from here, but it's not as close as somewhere, say, as like Bethel, right? So that could be considered a pro or a con, depending on if you want to be close to home or if you would prefer to move farther away. And then the third option was UCLA, okay, the University of California in Los Angeles. So the pro of that is it's got a good business school. Another pro, it's beautiful down there. You're over in California, right? The weather's good. You're living in California, so I'm sure that has to be nice. Some cons, though, is it is the farthest by far of all of your options from home. Like, that's a place where you definitely can't just, come home on a whim, right? You're kind of like, if you get lonely and homesick, you're kind of stuck there for a while unless you decide to come home and spend the money on a plane ticket or something. Another con is since it's out of state, even though it's a public college, since it's out of state, you're going to be paying more money for it. Okay. So those are some of the pros and cons of each option. Then step 4 is you need to select the best option available. Okay, so let's say maybe out of the three you decide to go to Purdue. You feel like Purdue is a good compromise. It's somewhat close to home, but it's far enough away that you have your space, but it's close enough that you can make a drive home on the weekend if you want. Okay. Also, it's affordable. It's got a great business school, right? You feel like Purdue is a pretty good compromise among the three options. Okay. Step 5 then is to make and implement a plan of action. How are you going to achieve your goal of going to Purdue? Well, what classes are you going to take in high school? Maybe you need to make applications to Purdue. Maybe you need to fill out a FAFSA. A FAFSA is a federal a financial aid form and things like that to start planning for how you're going to pay for college. Okay, so step 5 is making and implementing a plan of action. Step 6 then, once you're actually at Purdue, you've achieved your goal, you then need to evaluate the decision. Are you happy with your results? Are you happy with your choice of going to Purdue? And so on. Okay. All right, so that kind of goes over the decision-making process. Your assignment is on Canvas. It's the Chapter 6 case study. You can go ahead and get started on that. It is due by the next class period. Okay, have a good day. Bye.